dear friends of the night. I'm Theodore. Welcome to Night Harbor Sleep, a quiet harbor where stories drift in after midnight. Here, travelers from every corner of the world, where they found peace among rain, firelight, forgotten paths, and gentle oceans. Each night, a new guest joins us, with a tale meant not to thrill, but to calm your thoughts, slow your heartbeat, and carry you softly into sleep. So wherever you are, find a comfortable place. Let the night settle around you, and allow this voice to guide you toward the quiet side of the world. This is Night Harbor Sleep. Now, take a slow, deep breath in through the nose and out through the heart. Let go of the noise, the light, the rush of your day, because tonight we travel to Marinella Bay, where the forest meets the sea, and the wind carries stories through the pines. Our guest tonight is Lucia Moretti, keeper of an old seaside inn, the Silver Fern. Her story begins with rain, a stranger, and a light that never goes out. It was the kind of evening that belonged only to October. Wet cobblestones, yellow lamplight, and air that smelled faintly of salt and pine. The road curved down toward Marinella Bay, where a single inn glowed faintly through the fog. Its sign read, "The Silver Fern," hand-painted, swaying in the breeze. Lucia Moretti stood by the doorway, holding a lantern. She had the face of someone who'd learned to listen to storms. When travelers came this far, she always said the same words. Welcome home, even if you've never been here before. Inside, the inn breathed warmth. Logs cracked in the hearth, releasing the scent of cedar and cloves. A kettle whispered on the stove. The rain ticked softly against the window, steady as a heartbeat. On the wall hung a painting, the House of Lanterns, an old cliffside manor overlooking the bay, half swallowed by mist. Lucia glanced at it as she poured tea, her eyes full of memory. People say the lights still burn there, she murmured, even when the sea's asleep. She told her guest that the manor once belonged to a sailor and his wife, who lit lanterns along the cliffs to guide lost ships home. After a storm claimed his vessel, the wife kept the lights burning every night until her last breath. Now, Lucia said, the sea carries that glow from shore to shore. Some nights it even brushes against her windows. Outside, thunder rolled softly like distant drums, traveller smiled, drawn not to fear but to comfort, as if the ghost of kindness still walked the cliffs. Lucia placed 2 teacups on the wooden table, the steam rising in twisting ribbons. "Rain like this," she said, "always brings stories." The guest nodded, watching droplets slide down the window like silver threads. The fire hummed, and outside, the wind rearranged the world. Somewhere beyond the forest, the sea called, low and steady. Lucia's voice lowered. "Do you want to see where the lanterns still glow?" The traveller hesitated, then smiled. "At dawn," Lucia said, "the fog will open the way." That night, the inn seemed alive. Every beam and window whispered with the rain. The traveller read a few lines from an old journal left by the bedside. "Light is not the absence of darkness. It's the memory of warmth." The handwriting was delicate, feminine. Perhaps Lucia's mother, or the woman from the legend. Outside, a fox crossed the wet garden, its eyes catching the lantern light. It paused, looked back toward the cliffs, and vanished into the trees. Lucia stayed awake long after the lamps dimmed. She walked the empty halls, brushing her fingers along the framed photos. Guests long gone, smiles caught in sepia. Her footsteps made soft echoes that melted into the rain. In the kitchen, she folded a note and placed it by the door. "For the traveller, when you wake." Beside it, she left a key and a loaf of sweet chestnut bread. The note simply read, "Follow the path to the sea." At dawn, the rain eased into mist. The traveller stepped outside, the inn behind him glowing faintly gold through the fog. The air smelled of wet earth and wood smoke. Down a narrow lane, an old iron gate stood half open, ivy curling through its bars. A carved emblem above it read, "Casa del Lantern," House of Lanterns. A crow perched on the stone post, tilting its head as if to say, "You've come far enough to listen." The path wound between pines dripping with rain. Moss softened every step. At times the traveller could hear the sea breathing just beyond the cliffs. Slow, ancient, forgiving. A lantern hung from a branch, its flame still alive despite the mist. It swayed gently as the breeze passed, and in that flicker the traveller thought he saw a woman's silhouette. A shape made of light, tending the invisible line between sea and sky. When the traveller reached the end of the trail, the forest opened like a curtain. There it was, the House of Lanterns. Its windows were blind with salt and time, but one, on the highest floor, burned turned faintly amber. Waves struck the rocks below, scattering mist into silver threads. Each drop caught the sunrise and the house seemed to breathe, exhaling warmth into the cold. Inside, the air held the scent of brine and wax. Shelves lined with glass lamps, some filled with oil, others with seawater and shells. A music box turned quietly on a dusty table, its melody just strong enough to hold the silence together. Footprints marked the floor, not recent, but not ancient either. The traveler followed them to a window where a single unlit lantern waited. Next to it, a note written in the same delicate hand. If you're lost, light this. The traveler lit the lantern. Its glow spread like warmth returning to a sleeping body. Through the window the sea answered, waves catching gold as if the ocean itself remembered love. Somewhere, a bell chimed twice, low and sweet. Behind the traveler, the door creaked open. A soft voice said, she never stopped guiding them. It was Lucia. She stood in the doorway, hair damp, eyes calm. I keep them lit, she whispered, so no one forgets the way home. The two stood in silence, watching the lantern burn. Rain dripped from the ceiling like slow time. In that moment the traveler understood. The inn, the path, the story, all were part of her vigil. Not haunted, but held. Every flame in Marinella Bay came from this place. A promise carried on the wind. Lucia placed a hand on the window frame. People think ghosts live here, she said, but it's only love that refuses to go out. The lantern's light touched her face, revealing not sorrow but quiet endurance. Outside, gulls turned in the pale sky. The storm had passed. Only the sea remained, endless and awake. When they returned to the inn, morning had settled fully over the bay. The hearth still glowed, and the smell of coffee met them at the door. Lucia poured 2 cups and smiled. Now you've seen it, she said. Some people come here to sleep. Others, to remember. The traveller nodded, feeling lighter than when the night began. Later, as the guest prepared to leave, Lucia handed him the same lantern, still warm from the flame. Take it, she said. Wherever you go, may it find you again. He placed it carefully in his bag. Outside, the path shone with dew, and the sea whispered its low, eternal song. Somewhere far off, a single light blinked on among the cliffs, a signal that kindness, once lit, never truly fades. Evening returned to Marinella Bay, wrapped in a hush of amber light. It was the night of Halloween, but here, in this quiet coastal town, there were no masks or monsters, only lanterns and gratitude. Children in wool scarves carried small lanterns chestnuts drifted through the harbor streets. Lucia stood by the shore, the same lantern she had given away now resting beside her feet, returned, somehow, by the tide. She smiled faintly, tracing its rim with one finger. The sea was calm, breathing in long, slow intervals, as though it too waited for the night to begin. At the far edge of town, old fishermen lit torches along the pier. Their faces flickered gold and shadow, hands steady from years of work. Each flame was placed in memory of someone who had sailed but never returned. Lucia whispered their names as she passed, a soft litany of the sea's old secrets. She believed that remembering was a kind of navigation, a way to steer the heart back home. Above, a thin crescent moon floated pale against the rain clouds, watching like an old friend. The traveler had not gone far. He returned to the inn before dusk, his coat damp, his expression changed. In his eyes was the stillness of someone who had touched something sacred. Lucia poured him coffee, thick, sweet, and strong. They sat near the fire in silence. The only sounds were the soft tick of the clock and the murmur of distant waves. When he spoke, his voice was almost reverent. "I lit the lantern," he said, "and it felt like lighting a memory." Lucia nodded. "That's what we do here every year," she said, "on this night, All Hallows' Eve. We light our lanterns not for fear, but for remembrance." She explained that in Marinella Bay, Halloween was a night of gentle gratitude. "Each flame," she continued, "is for someone who guided us. Parents, sailors, friends, even strangers." Her hands moved gracefully as she spoke, as though she were weaving light into air. Outside, rain began again, soft and steady, drumming gently on the roof like fingertips on glass. By the harbour, people gathered with quiet excitement. No music, no fireworks, only the rhythm of footsteps and the whisper of rain. The lanterns were placed on wooden trays, each with a small candle inside. Children lined them up along the water's edge, their reflections shimmering like twin souls. Lucia stood among them, her shawl dark with rain, her eyes bright with warmth. She handed the traveller a small matchbook and nodded towards the sea. "It's your turn," she said softly. He knelt and lit one candle. The flame wavered, caught the breeze, then steadied, golden, alive. He pushed the tray gently into the tide. The lantern drifted outward, joining a slow procession of light that curved across the bay. For a moment, it seemed the ocean itself was carrying a constellation. Lucia whispered, "Every year they find their way back to the cliffs." The traveller watched until his lantern vanished into the silver horizon, heart quiet, breath deep. Later that night, fog wrapped the coastline like silk. The traveller followed Lucia up the familiar path through the forest, the same one that led to the House of Lanterns. Each pine glistened with beads of water. They carried a single lantern between them, its flame bending but never breaking. The forest opened again to reveal the cliffside manor. But tonight it was different. Every window glowed, faint, pulsing, alive, as though the house had been waiting all year for this moment. They stopped before the great wooden door. Lucia touched the handle, her breath visible in the cold air. Once a year, she said, the sea remembers her. Inside, the old lanterns flickered in harmony, their light reflecting off glass jars, seashells, and weathered beams. The air smelled of salt and wax and faint rosemary. It felt less like a haunting, more like a reunion. The traveler closed his eyes and listened, not to ghosts, but to warmth moving through old wood. Lucia set her lantern on the center table. Its flame rose, shimmered, then separated into dozens of tiny sparks, floating upward like fireflies. They hovered near the ceiling beams, then drifted out through the open window into the mist. Every light, she said, finds the one it belongs to. The traveler looked out toward the sea. He saw hundreds of lanterns reflected on the waves, some from the town, some he was sure from somewhere beyond sight. Together they painted the horizon in gentle gold. They left the house quietly. Behind them, the lights remained, steady and calm. Lucia locked the door, but the glow still filtered through the cracks, breathing with the tide. As they descended the path, the traveler asked, "Do you think she knows?" Lucia smiled faintly. "I think she's the one who brings the rain." The forest rustled, and the sea answered. A low, endless hum. The lantern in Lucia's hand dimmed, as if satisfied. Back at the Silver Fern, the hearth was still burning. Lucia hung the lantern by the window and exhaled. Steam rose from the kettle once more, curling into the ceiling beams. The traveller sat near the fire, watching shadows dance like quiet thoughts. "Some people fear the dark," he said. Lucia smiled. "That's because they've forgotten how to listen to it." She poured them both tea. Outside, the rain softened into a murmur, like gratitude spoken in another language. Midnight approached. It was the final hour of Halloween, when the veil between stories and dreams felt thinnest. The town below had fallen asleep, but the bay still shimmered with drifting lights. Lucia stepped outside one last time, her shawl wrapped tight. She watched as the tide drew the lanterns farther and farther out. Each one disappeared slowly, its reflection lingering a heartbeat longer. Somewhere in the distance a bell rang, one, then two. Lucia whispered, "Safe journey," and turned back toward the glow of her inn. Neither she nor the traveller felt ready for sleep. They left a lamp low in the window and sat quietly, listening to the harbour breathe. The last trays of light thinned to pale embers on the water, and clouds folded over the moon like careful hands. It feels as if the night is waiting, the traveller said. Lucia nodded, eyes on the horizon. Sometimes, after the festival, the sea speaks back. Rain paused. The world held its breath. Only the hush of oars far out and the soft tap of drops from the awning remained. Lucia poured a final cup of tea and set it untouched by the sill. For whoever is still travelling, she murmured. The traveller followed her gaze to the dark seam where sky met water, a line waiting to be written on. Just before the clock would strike 12, a faint pulse shivered beyond the cliffs. Not lightning, not a ship, but something older, returning. Lucia rose without a word. "Stay with me," she said softly. And as the hands reached midnight, the harbour seemed to lean closer, ready to remember. The clock at the Silver Fern struck midnight. Its chime rolled softly through the empty halls, echoing into the rain-polished silence. Lucia stood by the window, watching the last lanterns drift beyond sight. The sea was darker now, almost black, yet alive, restless, whispering. A low hum rose with the tide. Not quite a song, not quite the wind. It felt like words suspended in the water, trying to remember their language. Lucia opened the window wider. The cold mist brushed her cheeks like a familiar hand. Then she heard it, faint but clear. A woman's voice carried by the waves. It called her name once, tender and unhurried. Lucia. Her heart tightened, not from fear, but from recognition. It was the same tone she'd heard as a child in her dreams, when her grandmother told her the sea never forgets kindness. The traveller, unable to sleep, came down the staircase quietly. He found Lucia standing motionless, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "What do you hear?" he asked softly. Lucia didn't turn. "Not what?" she whispered. "Who?" The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint melody, a lullaby of salt and sorrow. The traveller closed his eyes and felt it too. The sea breathing stories. Outside, the fog lifted for a moment. From the cliffs beyond the bay, a distant light shimmered. Not from any ship. It pulsed like a heartbeat, golden and patient. Lucia's eyes glistened. "It happens every few years," she said. "When the lanterns reach the farthest current, they return as echoes of light." She stepped outside, barefoot, the ground cool and wet. Each wave seemed to rise toward her, not to strike, but to speak. sea remembers?" the traveller asked. Lucia smiled faintly. "The sea forgets everything, except love." The answer hung between them like mist. Then from deep below the cliffs a hollow note rang, the tone of a bell under water. Its echo lingered, spreading ripples across the bay. Lucia turned toward the sound, eyes bright with tears. "It's her," she murmured. "She's still lighting away." The traveller followed her gaze. For an instant the reflection of a woman appeared on the water, holding a lantern of pure light. Her figure shimmered like glass under moonlight, then faded into the waves. No fear came, only warmth. Lucia clasped her hands together, whispering words no one else could hear. The tide rose gently, touching her feet like a blessing. And when the next wave fell back, it left behind something small. A seashell, glowing faintly from within. Lucia picked it up. Inside the shell's curve was a tiny flicker of flame, impossibly alive. She cupped it between her palms, and the light pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "It's an echo," she said softly. "A message from the deep." The traveller watched in awe. The wind stilled. Even the sea seemed to wait. Then Lucia whispered to the shell, as if to a child, "I remember you." The light brightened once, then settled, calm, content. When they returned to the inn, dawn was still hours away. Lucia placed the shell beside the painting of the House of Lanterns. Its glow spread softly across the frame, illuminating the woman in the picture. A woman who looked strikingly like Lucia herself. The traveller leaned closer, astonished. "She has your eyes," he said. Lucia's voice trembled. "She should. She was my grandmother." Silence fell, deep and reverent. The fire crackled in gentle agreement, sparks drifting upward like stars reborn. Lucia sat, fingers tracing the shell's curve. "For years people thought it was a legend," she said, "but she was real. A keeper of the sea, lighting the cliffs long after he was gone." Her voice grew distant. "And now, every year, I do the same." The traveller nodded slowly. "So you are the last lantern keeper?" Lucia looked toward the window, where the horizon shimmered faintly with silver light. "No," she said gently, "not the last. The sea always finds another." Her eyes softened as she turned to him. "Perhaps it already has." Outside, the waves glowed faintly, hundreds of lanterns returning to shore, guided by the dawn. It was not an ending, but an inheritance, a promise renewed with every heartbeat of the tide. The night deepened once more, though the sea never truly slept. Lucia sat by the hearth, the faint glow of the shell pulsing beside her like a heartbeat left behind by the tide. The traveller watched her in silence, sensing that something unspoken hovered between them. Outside, the waves kept their rhythm. Steady, endless, ancient. Lucia finally spoke, her voice barely louder than the rain. "There's something I never told anyone," she said. "My family didn't just live by the sea. We were bound to it." She reached for an old chest beneath the staircase. Carved oak, worn by years of salt air. Inside were folded letters, sealed with wax, and a faded photograph of a woman standing on the cliffs. Her eyes, the same calm green as Lucia's, seemed to look straight through time. Lucia traced the photo's edge with trembling fingers. "She was the first keeper of lanterns," she said. "When my grandfather never returned from the sea, she swore that no one else would lose their way as she did." Her voice softened. "The sea took her body, but it never took her promise." The traveller leaned closer, studying the letters. The ink had faded, but one line still shimmered faintly, as though written in starlight. "To my daughter Lucia, the light will find you when you are ready to keep it." The traveller looked up, astonished. "Your name," he began. Lucia nodded slowly, tears glinting like dew. "She wrote this long before I was born. My mother said it was nonsense, a ghost story. But the sea remembered." She placed the letter near the shell, and the flame inside flickered brighter, almost as if it recognized her. Lucia closed her eyes. "I used to dream," she whispered, "that I was standing on the cliffs with her, holding the same lantern. Each time she would turn to me and say, 'When the last light fades, another must rise.'" The traveller listened, his breath quiet and even, as if lulled by the rhythm of her words. "She wanted me to keep the promise alive," Lucia continued. "The promise that no one should feel lost in the dark. Not sailors, not strangers, not even those who've gone before us." Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from reverence. She wasn't a legend, she was family. Outside, dawn began to whisper its first silver breath across the water. The traveller stood and looked toward the bay. Dozens of faint lights floated on the horizon. the last of the festival's lanterns, now pale as ghosts. Lucia rose beside him, holding the glowing shell. "Tomorrow the tide will carry them all away," she said. "But not this one." She placed the shell into his hands, its warmth spreading gently into his palms. "Every keeper must pass the light to someone new." The traveller stared at it, wordless, realizing that the story was never hers alone. The light was never meant to end. The morning drifted slowly into Marinella Bay, as if the day itself was uncertain whether to wake the world. Mist rested gently over the water, silver and still, carrying the faint scent of salt and wood smoke. The traveller had gone. Only his cup remained by the window, a soft ring of coffee marking his presence. Lucia stood on the balcony, her shawl drawn close. Below her, the waves folded over themselves. Calm, forgiving. Every ripple shimmered, like a memory of lanterns drifting in the night. She closed her eyes and breathed the silence. Perhaps, she thought, the world is never truly dark, only waiting for someone to light it again. The beach was empty, yet alive. The tide had erased every footprint, leaving behind gold dust scattered like sleeping stars. Lucia stepped barefoot onto the cool sand. The sea greeted her with a whisper, a breath, soft and kind. She knelt and touched the water. For a moment, the reflection trembled and gathered into the faint smile of her grandmother. "Thank you," she whispered. A gentle wave rose, bowed, and kissed the shore in reply. By afternoon, the sky turned pale and forgiving. A soft rain fell, not stormy, but kind. Children laughed in the streets below. Lanterns hung beneath awnings to dry, and Marinella Bay, for a moment, felt like a hymn hummed by the sea. Lucia stood by the window, polishing the glass of a single lantern. It still carried warmth from the night before. She placed it on the sill and murmured, "May every traveller find their way home." The room brightened, as though the light had understood. Evening approached, and the rain faded to mist. The inn smelled of pine smoke and fresh bread. Lucia moved through the quiet rooms, folding blankets, setting cups, tending to small, beautiful details. When When she passed the painting of the House of Lanterns, she stopped. The golden strokes flickered faintly, as if the woman within the frame was still tending her light. Lucia smiled and whispered, "It's safe now." Outside, a seagull cried once, and then the world fell still again. Night settled, smooth and deep. Lucia carried a small oil lamp into the garden. The air smelled of rosemary and salt. The path shimmered with dew. The moon drifted low behind a soft veil of clouds. She placed the lamp on a stone ledge. Its flame trembled and steadied, no longer to guide ships, but simply to keep company with the night. Lucia sat on the bench. The trees whispered, and the world, she thought, was full of voices, even in silence, even in sleep. The sound of the tide returned, slow, steady, patient. Each wave seemed to bring something and take something away. Lucia imagined all the lanterns still drifting through faraway seas, their light finding strangers' hearts. She looked at her hands, still faintly warm. The flame, she realized, had never left her. It had only changed shape, from fire to feeling, from sight to soul. Inside, the hearth waited. Lucia entered slowly. The air was rich with warmth and memory. She added a log to the fire. Sparks lifted gently, like lanterns seeking the sky. Amber light painted slow strokes on the walls. Lucia sank into the old armchair. Its creak sounded like an old lullaby. Outside, the wind sighed through the trees. It was the same sound that had lulled generations before her. The kettle began to hum, slow, soft, unhurried. Lucia poured herself a cup of tea. Steam curled upward like a fading dream. The warmth filled her hands. She took a slow sip, tasting honey and cloves. The sweetness lingered on her lips. She closed her eyes and leaned back. The fire crackled in rhythm with her breath, and somewhere the sea matched her pace. The rain returned, barely a whisper against the glass. Each drop felt like a quiet word from the sky. Lucia listened. Sometimes she could almost believe the sea was speaking through it, repeating her grandmother's promise. No one will ever be lost again. Her eyes softened. The rhythm of the rain became her lullaby. Sleep gathered behind her eyes, slow as the tide. Still, she smiled. The lantern on the sill flickered, then steadied. Its flame leaned gently toward the sea. Lucia watched through half-closed eyes. Both of them had waited through storms. Both had found their peace. She whispered a good night to no one in particular, perhaps to the sea, perhaps to the light. Either way, the night answered with silence. Down at the harbour, fishermen prepared their boats for dawn. Their lanterns swayed in the breeze, glowing like small hearts in the dark. Lucia watched them faintly through the window. Each flicker reminded her that light belongs to everyone, that every small kindness ripples outward. She thought of the traveller. Perhaps he too carried a lantern now. She smiled. Her eyes grew heavy. The world kept breathing. The inn creaked softly. Wood sighed. The bell at the harbour rang twice. Lucia stood and dimmed the lamps one by one. The lantern by the window remained, its reflection trembling like a heartbeat of light. Outside, the mist returned, folding the world in silver calm. It was time to rest. Lucia walked down the quiet hallway, a peaceful path that echoed with gentle steps. Shelves of journals and letters lined the walls, each one holding pieces of stories once whispered before sleep. Her fingers traced the edge of an old book, and her grandmother's words still read, "Keep the flame, even when the wind forgets it." A sleep story written long ago, she thought. A message meant to guide hearts home through the dark. She smiled softly. The wooden floor cooled her bare feet, and the faint sound of soothing rain echoed beyond the window. At the corridor's end, she paused. The calm sea shimmered through the glass, black and silver, endless, kind. Lucia stood there for a long moment, listening to the gentle ocean waves, breathing to their rhythm. seated in quiet warmth, a sanctuary of peaceful night and soft shadows. The air smelled of rain-soaked linen, sleep and distant ocean breeze. Actually, Lucia lit a small candle, its golden glow painting comfort on the walls. The flame wavered, then steadied, like the breath of a relaxing bedtime story narrator. Slow, calm, reassuring. She lay beneath the blanket, the hush of rain sounds circling the inn like a lullaby. Outside, the waves of Marinella Bay moved gently, whispering guided sleep meditation to the shore. Somewhere, a single lantern still drifted at sea, not lost, only waiting to be found. Lucia exhaled, long and slow, and drifted toward the relaxing rhythm of the sea. Sleep came to her like the tide, quiet, steady, forgiving. It wrapped around her thoughts like a soft voice in a calm sleep story. Her last thought was of the flame she had passed on, and now every ending is only a beginning, wearing softer light. The candle flickered once, then steadied, its glow melting gently into the room. Outside, the lanterns over Marinella Bay dimmed one by one, their reflections blending with the moonlight. The inside, old wood, warm walls, and the comfort of a relaxing bedtime story whispered by the sea. Lucia's breathing slowed, matching the waves of the calm ocean. And in that stillness, the whole bay seemed to dream with her. Now, let the story fade. Let its soft narration linger in your heart. You are safe. You are home. The calm sea outside your thoughts still breathes softly. Each wave carries away the weight of your day. Each soothing sound of rain washes your mind clean. Feel the warmth of the light you've kept. It glows quietly within you, just as Lucia's lantern still glows beyond the bay. Soon, the screen will turn to soft darkness, leaving only the sound of gentle rain and the whisper of the sea. Let the black screen help your device rest, as you too drift deeper into peaceful sleep. The rain will continue, calm and steady, keeping you safe through the night, while saving your battery until morning light. Let your heart beat slow. Let your breath follow the tide. You are drifting now into deep sleep, into peaceful dreams, into night's gentle silence. sleep well, dear traveller.